Jamie Dimon. Guys, I am not a big fan of corporate America, but Jamie Dimon caught my attention recently because he's one of those guys that's just super real, right? He says it like it is, and I like people like that. So I started doing a huge deep dive into Dimon a little while ago, and man, I've listened to so many interviews from him. And after reading this book, it really gave me a good outline of kind of his story, how he rose to the top of the financial world, as it says on the cover. It's really remarkable what Dimon's been able to do at JP Morgan Chase. Guys, we need to understand finance. We need to understand how the banks operate, right? Especially if we're going to build great businesses, right? Maybe I'm not going to, be a CEO at a bank, but if I build a massive business, I need to understand how the banks work, and I need to be able to develop connections with these bankers, right? And show that I understand how the game is played, right? So these are people that I see myself, that when I'm older, there will be another Jamie Dimon, there'll be another, Steve Schwartzman, whatever it may be, Larry Fink. And so I want to understand how this game works, right? How the banks operate. And one day I'll be able to be well connected with those guys at the top of this game. So yeah, let's get right into it, guys. The House of Dimon. Let's start off the Dimon way. On Jamie Dimon, he will get into the details with anyone on anything. Dimon says, the pedestal is a terrible place to be. He reaches out to anyone at any level who is involved with a project or task. So Dimon was a different kind of CEO than a lot of guys in corporate America who, aren't really involved in the day-to-day operations. They're very stepped out. They don't really understand what's happening at an operational level in all the different departments of their company. Dimon's very hands-on, and he wants to understand who is involved with a project or task, and he wants to speak with them to see what they're doing. And then, in the first chapter, it, shares that Dimon saved Bear Stearns. We'll get into that a little bit more later. And then here, Tier 1 capital functions as the equity capital of the bank and supports other levels of capital, such as preferred stock and debt. So guys, we're going to have a lesson in finance as well as understanding Dimon. I wrote everything that I thought was important. Dimon is, this is a few of Dimon's character traits that people say he has. He's impatient, demanding, and his temper can flare up. It sounds a bit like me in some situations. I think that's fine to be impatient, demanding, and have an occasional flare up in your temper, right? You got to demand excellence from people in your company. Dimon made money on arbitrage, which is the difference between two assets. Or JP Morgan made money on arbitrage. And I've kind of used this lesson of arbitrage in my own business that I have right now. I have a marketing business, and I have kind of an arbitrage business model where I'm buying assets on the low and selling them on the high. And I think, from what I've seen, the people who have this, ability to make money on arbitrage really make the most, especially in the investing game and in finance. Okay. For Dimon, the focus is never on what's going well. So Dimon always focused on, right, the issues, right? Not on what's going well, but what can we fix? And then Dimon also says not getting the job done is never an option. All right, so chapter 2, taking a bear-sized bite. J.P. Morgan acquired Bear Stearns, and that was Dimon's biggest moment. Dimon has a reputation for under-promising and over-delivering. And then in this chapter, they talk about what a prime brokerage is, which is a group within investment banks that manages stock, lending a service to hedge fund clients. Is that correct? Groups within investment banks that manage stock, lending a service. Yeah, I'll look back in the book for that. That sentence isn't written correctly. Bear Stearns faced a run on the bank as funds were withdrawn and sources of short-term financing dried up. So this is the predicament that the bank was in. We need a margin for error. Without that, we simply can't do it. What Dimon does best: takes an acquisition and makes it work. Simple. I love the simplicity of that statement. Chapter 3, the Weil years. So this is when Dimon works for Sandy Weil, coming out of Harvard Business School. Dimon always wanted to build something, right? He could have gone and taken a job at Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, right? But he decided, no, I want to build something. And then there was a quote here, I'm not sure who exactly said it, but it was in the book, that from a young age, he wanted to run something and have power. Sounds familiar. If you had an idea and told it to Sandy, he'd come back to you as if he'd come up with it. And so that was Sandy Weil, Dimon's boss. And as soon as I heard that, it reminded me of Steve Jobs in his book that I read, the one that Walter Isaacson wrote. How, employees would come to Steve and say, Steve, I have this great idea. And then Steve would usually say, oh, that's shit. We're not doing that. And then, but he'd react really fast. But Steve would then think about it. And then he'd come back to the person who said it, basically saying, hey, I have this idea, as if he had come up with it. It's hilarious. So that just reminded me of that. Dimon cut costs, eliminated losing operations, restaffed key jobs, and gained control over operations. Chapter 4, A Force on Wall Street. This is Dimon. There's a difference between buying a house and buying a house on fire. Loyalty is never to one person, it's to the organization. In this chapter, Dimon and Sandy Weil run into some problems because Dimon refuses to promote Sandy Weil's daughter. And this just shows that Dimon demanded excellence, right? It didn't matter that it was Sandy's daughter. He didn't care. He was like, you don't deserve the promotion. I'm not giving it to you. And then anything less than strict risk management would not be tolerated. And then, we'll get into chapter 5, the recruitment of Jamie Dimon. Dimon took a $30 million severance package and got recruited to Bank One. It says that Dimon was very straightforward and direct. Here, Dimon says, to walk into a company new, you put aside everything you think, thought, or will ever think. He wore the neutral jersey of an outsider. Nothing was untouchable as far as Dimon was concerned. Chapter 6, turnaround of Bank One. Never talk about what the stock is today. Dimon didn't care about what the stock was today. He was thinking about the long term, right? And a lot of people are focused on short-term gain, especially in this game, in finance. So Dimon was like, I don't care what the stock is today. Dimon made major restructuring changes at the bank. He ruthlessly fired people. I forgot how many people he fired. I think it was a lot of people, though. And then Here, Dimon's fortress balance sheet. This is what he's famous for. His fortress balance sheet, he reduced commercial exposure on and off the balance sheet by $10 billion to $20 billion, which freed up capital earning low returns. Dimon integrated systems. And then here's a quote from Dimon. Does someone deserve a job because he's a good guy? Absolutely not. Right? The ruthlessness of Dimon. He doesn't just give you a free handout. Dimon tied pay closely to the performance of the bank. Right? The bank performs better, you make more money. It's really simple. Dimon was on a search and destroy mission when it came to wasteful spending. Dimon was ruthless with the vendors, made sure they fulfilled on their service contracts to the bank, right? So the bank was like working with a ton of different vendors, and Dimon was like, why are we working with all these vendors if we can just do this within the organization? So if they weren't providing value, cut them. Ruthlessly cut out inefficiencies of the bank, like their call center, for example. He increased loan reserves for more protection against bad loans and defaults. He increased loan reserves for more protection against bad loans and defaults. Dimon focused on profitability rather than growth at any cost, which is what a lot of companies and institutions do. They focus on growth at any cost rather than profitability. Chapter 7, back on Wall Street. Dimon turned the bank from $500 million in losses to a record $3.5 billion in profit. The bane of most large companies is bureaucracy. Dimon says here, the boss's job isn't to make the best decision. It's to make sure the best decision is made. And then here, it's so funny when Dimon is in meetings with staff and they don't have the information that he wants. It was a funny example. They'll say like, oh, I'll get back to you on that. And then Dimon would respond by saying, I want it tomorrow. Right? Dimon wanted quick turnaround time. If it's important information, they should have it. And he shouldn't have to wait that long to receive it. Dimon was rigorous in cutting waste, limos, executive coaches, etc. All this garbage. Unnecessary stuff. JP Morgan mortgage servicing business handled $800 billion in home loans. Like, guys, when you read these numbers, you really start to understand how the banks rule the world. It's unbelievable. Dimon anticipates the subprime mortgage crisis and sells $12 billion off, right? So Dimon saw what was about to happen in 2008 and essentially pulled out, all the banks, subprime mortgage loans, ahead of that happening. And, that was huge, obviously, for the bank, to remain strong during those times. The toughest management decision is not going into an area that other competitors are growing in aggressively, which is exactly what happened with this subprime mortgage crisis. Everyone was going into that area, making money in it, and Dimon had the discipline and the foresight to say, no, I see a problem here. We got to pull out. Dimon was prepared to leave money on the table today if it posed a risk problem tomorrow. His emphasis on risk management separates him from the pack. All right, the Dimon Fortress balance sheet is comprised of strong loan loss reserves, conservative accounting, and paying a whole lot of attention to the assets and liabilities on your balance sheet. And then, I was talking about how AIG during the financial crisis was bailed out by the government with an $85 billion loan, and it ended up being $152 billion by the end of the year. Dimon will never compromise on protecting the balance sheet from trouble And at JP Morgan, they view their risky positions on a gross basis rather than a net basis with offsetting positions. If Jamie senses there's any politics involved or backstabbing, you're dead. That's a quote from someone who worked at the company. A strong protective defense enables a strategic offense. Fortresses present enemies with obstacles that require costly and time-consuming attacks to overcome. You must know when to deploy your capital. Financial innovation creates risks that are not adequately recognized until it is too late. All right, Chapter 9, Taking Over Washington Mutual. This takeover demonstrated the Fortress balance sheet in action. He waited for the most attractive opportunity to expand their retail banking presence in a shareholder-friendly way. And then I just want to give you guys some stats to put this into perspective. At this moment in history, JP Morgan stats. They had 14,300 ATMs, 24.5 million checking accounts, and $1.43 trillion in mortgages served. Dimon raised capital to go on the offensive. The worst case scenario was that they would break even for 3 years with this acquisition, which is not a bad worst case scenario. See, that's why Dimon is known for his risk management, because even in the worst case scenario, they'd break even. Panics and opportunities seem to go together as the stronger consume the weak. Dimon manages a bank the way Buffett manages money. Chapter 10, Navigating Financial Storms. I'm just astonished by some of the numbers I was reading in here. The credit default swap market is $55 trillion market. SIVs were set up to profit from the spread between short-term and long-term debt. CDOs were created from pools of debt such as mortgages and then divided into segments or tranches based on credit quality. The bursting of the housing bubble caused banks to write down several $100 billion in bad loans caused by mortgage delinquencies. In many cases, what was owed on the mortgage exceeded the property value. Not great. You can see how all this turned to shit. Risk models are backward-looking by design. Risk models are backward-looking by design, right? So Dimon was saying, if we're creating a risk model, we're basing that off of information that we've learned in the past. So he doesn't see that as the entire picture, right? Bad practices like underwriting no documentation loans were taking place during 08. And then people seem to think that they want regulation until problems happen. So Dimon's saying some regulation is good. We shouldn't be too regulated and, so that we drive out people from wanting to compete in the marketplace. But, some regulation is important. And then chapter 11 was the last chapter. It talked a lot about his philanthropy, his family values, that kind of stuff. Guys, I would recommend reading this book, House of Dimon. It's really good, concise, 200 pages. You can knock it out in a couple days. I would highly suggest it. And we need to learn from someone like Jamie Dimon, because he's been in a very powerful position for a long time. There's a reason for that. He has deep knowledge, and the more I look into him and see the things that he's talking about, the more I feel like he's going to get involved in the political game in one way or the other. I would definitely look into it, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something today. Pick up a book, get to reading, get this book if you want. But constant pursuit of growing, learning, becoming better every single day. I will talk to you guys soon. Blaze a Cyan. signing off.